A few days ago, I was lucky enough to be able to go to Gamescom, and while this wasn't the first year that I attended, this year was pretty special, because they had a certain game there, which was playable but only behind closed doors. Of course, I'm talking about Persona 3 Reload, and of course, I couldn't just go there and play the game without coming home and making a video about it afterwards. Now, I wasn't allowed to record any footage, nobody was, but I did take some notes right after leaving the booth, and I tried to pay attention to as many details as possible in the hopes of bringing you the best demo breakdown as possible. I'm sorry that the video is a little bit late as well. I originally wanted to make this right after Gamescom, but I got sick and my voice was basically gone for a week or so I had to delay the video. I don't know, you might even still hear it in my voice that I sound a little bit off, but I didn't want to delay the video any more than I already had. But I also played some other demos at Gamescom, such as the Persona 5 Tactica demo, Granblue Fantasy Relink, Star Ocean 2 Remake, to name a few, and I will be making a video talking about those as well very soon. So if you're interested in more of that stuff, why not check out my channel and subscribe? And if you like this video, why not leave a like and a comment? I really appreciate the support and it does help with the algorithm as well. But without further ado, let's dive into this demo. And Atlus actually had two demos prepared for Gamescom. A full moon demo and a new moon demo. Because of this, I also stood in line to play the demo twice, just so I could experience as much as possible from what they had to offer. The full moon demo was the first one that I played, and as the name suggests, this is where you play through the first full moon dungeon. You start off on the rail tracks, you play through the train level, and you fight the boss in the end. This demo was literally taken straight out of the game since it included all the story cutscenes as well, and because of that this was a very linear demo, but I'll get into the details a bit later. The second demo was the new moon demo, and for this one they just put you in Tartarus, starting at the second floor, and you could basically go as far as you could in the time limit that you had. But to start off, let's talk about the combat, since this is the main thing that was basically showcased in both demos. And a lot of this has also been shown in the new trailers that released during opening night live, or basically a few hours after the opening night live livestream from Gamescom. The two new biggest things that were shown off being the all-out attacks and the baton pass mechanic. Of course, the all-out attacks aren't new for Persona 3, the original also had them, but they added a lot more style to them, and they also just made them look a lot better. But at the same time, something that I really like about them is that even though they changed a lot, they're still very faithful and they feel Persona 3. They might have added some Persona 5 elements to them, like the final splash art screen, but here it's a lot simpler, a lot cleaner, and kind of toned down compared to the very over-the-top and kind of bombastic Persona 5 splash screens. The animation also kept all the elements from the original, like the dust cloud of battle, and you can also see all the characters running in for the attack. What I really like about this animation is how it changes depending on which character is triggering the attack. If you trigger an attack with Yukari, for example, she will be the character closest to the screen for this 3D animation, and of course she will also be the one in the splash art at the end. So far Atlus has only shown the protagonist's arts for this, but in the demo I was able to trigger the Yukari one. Now, during another convention of PAX, you could also play Persona 3 and it wasn't behind closed doors, so some people have been taking pictures of it, but online most of the pictures I've seen have been taken down, either by the original poster or by Atlus, so I'm not gonna include those images in the video, just to make sure. But I can of course still describe it. And her finisher starts with an animation in which she finishes off the enemy with one last shot of her bow, then the results of the battle show up, being the amount of XP, money and items that you gained, and then her animation transitions into her doing a cute pose, which then turns into the splash art. The art itself is very similar to the MC's art, since it still has the background text saying mass destruction, but instead of her background being blue, hers is pink, and the white text with her says there you have it. Her pose is kinda like the cute anime girl pose, leaning forward while brushing her hair to the side. Now, I didn't get to trigger Junpei's all-out attack since he only had physical attacks until I reached floor 6, which is when I ran out of time, and every time that I tried to make him crit, he just kept missing his attacks. But a friend that played it said that his attack had him swinging at the enemy, and then he would fall over, come back up and do a cool pose. The dialogue that comes up whenever you start an all-out attack is also a bit different compared to the original, because while in the original each character only had one line, like Akihiko saying, "I've been waiting for this," here the characters actually had multiple lines, and sometimes it would be Mitsuru as the nav giving you the signal for the attack instead. Which is pretty cool since it adds more variety, and while I'm not 100% sure because I couldn't get it to happen, I'm pretty sure that the original lines are still in the game, because if I remember correctly, Mitsuru doesn't announce all of the all-out attacks. And since we're talking about the ending of a battle, I'm also gonna mention that shuffle time is back, but they did change it quite a bit compared to the original Persona 3, bringing it closer to the shuffle time in Persona 4, since they just show you all the cards this time, and you can freely choose between them. Compared to the original, of course, where the cards were turned around and shuffled, so you kinda have to choose blindly. Another thing that they added in the combat of Reload is the Baton Pass, which was introduced in Persona 5. In the Tartarus demo, you only unlock this after defeating the boss on the 5th floor, but in the Full Moon demo, you actually had it unlocked from the start, so I did get to use this mechanic quite a few times. And instead of it being called a Baton Pass, here it's called Shift, and you can use it whenever you hit an enemy's weak point. Just like normally you would get to one more, but now you also have a button prompt on the left telling you to press L2 or left trigger if I remember correctly, which then triggers it. But since you're surrounding the enemy in Persona 3, you can't just run up to your teammate and give them a high five, so instead there's a very different animation that plays. To give you an example, if you shift from the main character to Yukari, the camera will give you a close-up of the MC, who does a little nod in her direction. Then in the background there's this blue line which goes from him to her, as the camera shifts to a close-up of Yukari, who does her animation, which is a little thumbs up, kinda like her original end of battle animation from the original Persona 3, before she then readies her bow ready to attack. I also got to trigger one with Junpei, and his animation is him wiping his face with his thumb. At the point of the game that I played it though, the shift didn't include all the buffs that Persona 5 had. Like, it doesn't buff your attack or let you regain SP or anything like that. But since it was only made available after a small cutscene after you beat the boss on the 5th floor, I can definitely see this mechanic being expanded upon as you progress the story and beat more bosses, so while it's not guaranteed that these buffs will become a thing, I feel like it's pretty likely. Music-wise, the game also had a new version of Mass Destruction playing, which is the default battle OST, and the new track that's been shown in the new trailer, It's Going Down Now, plays whenever you ambush the enemy. But now that I've explained the main additions to the combat, I do want to address one small other thing, because I've seen a lot of people online say that they're worried about Reload, since a lot of the new mechanics seem to be taken from Persona 5. And I guess that they're just worried about Persona 3 not being Persona 3 anymore, but turning into a Persona 5 reskin, and I personally don't think that you should worry about that at all. Like, yeah, they did add a shift mechanic, and the all-out attacks do have splash art now, but the game still felt like Persona 3. Like I said before, the splash art is a lot more simple and also more consistent between the characters. It's also a very different art style compared to Persona 5. Same thing with shuffle time still being there, and the shift also feels very different. They're not just copy and pasting elements from Persona 5 to Persona 3, they're just taking genuinely good game mechanics and bringing them to an older entry in the franchise to make the combat flow better, which in my opinion is exactly what a remake like this should aim to do. But moving on from the combat, the next big thing is of course Tartarus and the visual changes. I'm gonna start with talking about the hub area, like the very first floor of Tartarus, because this actually got some really cool upgrades. As I already said, I played a very early section of the game, so it was just Junpei, Mitsuru and Yukari standing there, but instead of just standing around, they were actually doing stuff. Like, Yukari was fiddling with her bow while sitting on the staircase, and Junpei was doing baseball practice swings. It's something small, but it's so much nicer compared to them just standing there waiting for you to talk to them. But of course, you could still talk to them and ask them to join your party or to leave your party. Another small but nice change in the hub is the teleporter. It's not just an object that you interact with anymore, it's actually a lot bigger and you can like step into it. Again, it's a really small thing, but I just like that you can step into it and that it actually teleports you compared to the original versions where you just stood in front of it and kinda touched it. But if we're talking about the rest of Tartarus now, just like they said in interviews, as you can already see in the small clips that have been released, it's of course got a major visual upgrade. And I really gotta give it to the devs. They said in an interview that you can't fully appreciate these upgrades unless you see it in motion, and I 100% agree. It looks fantastic in screenshots and in the trailers, but when playing the game yourself, there are so many visual elements that are constantly moving that add so much to the vibe. There are these feathers floating around in the air, slowly falling down. It has moving walls, making it so that you can run up to a small opening in the walls, which will then shift open to become a new hallway. There are these iron gates in front of the staircase which will open up when you come closer so you can continue. And just a lot of other stuff like that makes Tartarus really nice to look at. And also outside of the visuals, the individual rooms in Tartarus are a lot bigger and have a lot more variety, also adding the breakable objects for smaller item drops and stuff like that. The floors themselves are still randomly generated though, in the way of the layout, and the map also still gets drawn out as you walk around, just like in the original. But something that is different are the treasures, because now they're marked as soon as you enter the floor. Mitsuru will also call out to you as soon as you enter the floor. She'll say something along the lines of, "There's a rare chest on this floor." And as they already said in interviews, you can also dash or sprint around Tartarus, which makes everything flow really well. The transition between combat and exploration is also just super smooth, and thanks to all of these changes, Tartarus was a lot of fun to explore. The floors aren't connected seamlessly though, but thanks to the next generation of consoles they might as well be, because there was literally no loading time between them. And these floors that we saw from the trailers already, with the big staircases, I can now confirm are the boss rooms. You start on this big staircase, which then leads to a big central room with the boss in it, and then the room continues, similarly like in the original, by splitting up into different paths, some of them leading to a treasure room and some of them leading to the next staircase to continue. But while that's basically it for Tartarus, the full moon section also had some pretty cool upgrades. Mostly visual-wise, but gameplay-wise it's actually been extended a little bit compared to Portable, since you can walk on the train tracks leading up to the train. This was also a thing that you could do in FES, and I'm pretty sure that you could in the original as well, but in Portable, this section just starts off on the train itself. The section on the tracks is also a lot more cinematic, since the camera will take a wider angle, showing you more of Tartarus and the river in the background, which looked absolutely stunning. I genuinely could not believe how good everything looked while playing this. Inside of the train as well, you could just look out of the windows to look at Tartarus in the background. Or you could look through the windows in the doors to already look into the next carts. Another really cool small detail that they added here as well is that the door to the final cart was already frozen over. Like, it's a small detail, but since the first boss is an ice boss, I thought it was really cool that you could see its effect on the environment in the carts leading up to the final train cart. The dialogue in these sections are also basically the exact same as in the original Persona 3. Since I was limited to only 15 minutes, I couldn't read through all of it, but stuff like Yukari telling Junpei to not look up her skirt, or even the conversation between Akihiko and Ikutsuki in the dorm was all intact. But that basically covers everything that was in the demo, gameplay and visual-wise. But because I am the person that I am, I also took some time to search through the game's menus just to see what details I could find. And while I didn't find a lot, I did find a few interesting bits, which I want to mention quickly. Starting off with the menus. Most of the menus that were in the demo you could already find on Twitter and just in random articles, because Atlus did release screenshots from them. But what these screenshots don't show is that here in the equip menu, the main character is holding a glass shard, and the image inside of that shard actually changes according to who you're hovering over into the menu. It's a bit weird that the screenshot doesn't show you this because it's hovering over Yukari here, but in the demo that I played, when I would hover over Yukari, inside of the glass shard you would actually see Yukari's artwork, which I thought was just a pretty cool design choice. Another thing that I found, which is probably a bit more useful information compared to the previous one, is the social stats, because one of the menus that I checked was the status menu, and there you could also check the social stats of the main character. And because of that, I can now confirm here that the game just keeps the stats from the original game, being the academic stat, charm and courage. So they did not add the new ones from Persona 5, which is something that I saw a lot of people talk about online. A lot of people were talking if they would up the number of social stats, but no, Persona 3 Reload has 3 social stats just like in the original. And I think that that basically covers everything from the Gamescom demo. To quickly just give my final thoughts on it, this demo left me extremely impressed. If you know me or you know my channel, you know that I've been hyping up a Persona 3 remake even since before it got announced, and now that it's real, I can't believe how good it actually looks. I went into the demo with super high expectations, and somehow all of my expectations were blown out of the water. Even if my time with this demo was short, I absolutely loved it. And it really looks like the devs did everything they could to bring this masterpiece back to modern platforms in a way that it deserves to come back. Now, I did hear some people online say that the game felt slow to play, and personally I don't really agree with that. If you only played the full Moon demo, I can kinda see where you're coming from, since that's a very linear and story-heavy demo, but even then everything felt very smooth to me combat-wise. Especially in the Tartarus demo, thanks to the added dash mechanic. But that's basically it for me. I'm pretty sure that I covered everything. So, what do you think about the remake? Were you able to attend Gamescom and play it? What are your thoughts on it? And even if you didn't get to attend, we have a lot of trailers by now, so what are your thoughts on the game? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like the video and check out my channel and subscribe. All the support is greatly appreciated. But with that, I'm gonna end the video. I hope you enjoyed watching and hopefully I'll see you again soon.